Welcome to Ask the Experts. I'm Jill Schlesinger, editor-at-large of CBS Money Watch. I'm joined by my cohort and boss,
Jack Otter, executive editor of CBSMoneyWatch.com.
I was thinking that I should start sucking up to you a little bit more because you are
That would
officially
be
my
fantastic,
boss. You
yeah.
approve my vacation and
Your expense account, more
my
importantly.
expense account, all those
Yep.
cab rides. And given the tight job market, it is good to butter
Nice
up the
transition.
boss. Isn't
Wow.
it good?
Yeah, 2 points.
I know. Thank you.
Yeah.
Hold on. Thank you. Okay, we are actually going to be talking about jobs, and I will introduce our guests in one moment. But first, just a quick snapshot. The Dow up about 80 points today. Nice January, Jack. Are you a believer in the January effect? As goes January, so goes the year?
Not at all, but correlation might continue, in which case, hey, it's good news. Yeah.
We'll take it. So
Sure.
January was a pretty, like, the best month since 1997 for big stocks.
And what was also interesting was the lack of volatility.
Yeah.
Everyone calmed down just a little bit, which may or may not last.
Yes, chillax, as my nephew would say.
Yeah.
The one thing that we are not chillaxing about is the jobs market. And we brought an expert in because, you know, this week we've got the big jobs report. The ADP private employment report came out today, about 170,000 new jobs added. And that's all well and good, but the big Labor Department report is out on Friday. Looks like 135, maybe 150,000 new jobs. Unemployment expected to stay at 8.5%. So we're kind of stuck, huh?
Yeah, I mean, that's a pretty lousy number. I'm guessing that private will be up closer to ADP, around 170. We'll find out that government, as has been the case in recent months, has cut back. So that'll subtract 20, 30,000 jobs, and we'll end up in the 150 range. But that's not enough to get us back where we need to be.
13 million folks looking for work, and we've heard from a lot of them, a lot of you out there. So without further ado, let me introduce our guest, Caroline Ceniza-Levine, who, I mean, if you were applying to college, you would check off a lot of boxes with that name, no?
Yes,
That would be a
absolutely.
good name to have. Okay. So she is the co-founder of Six Figures Start, a career coaching firm. She's an adjunct assistant professor of professional development at Columbia University School of International and Public Affairs. Now, that particular title sounds like they really want you to do something, but they don't pay you a lot, right?
Yeah.
That's pretty much the
Adjunct
deal.
is the operative
Right.
word there.
Adjunct
Yeah.
is we hose you on the
Yes.
money, but you get to use us on your resume.
Exactly.
Okay, good. Well, so as long as we know what we're talking about. She's the co-author of 6 Steps to Job Search Success, which is very hard for me to say. And the best-selling How the Fierce Handle Fear, Secrets to Succeeding in Challenging Times. She wrote 2 books in 2 years, Jack.
Fear is actually a really fascinating topic. Did you get into sort of what goes on in your brain and how some people handle fear so much better than others?
It's actually an anthology of essays on fear. I write
Okay.
about fear and career change, actually. So
Career change is as we would call that.
That's what we would do.
That's
Career
very
change.
good. All right. Well, anyway, she's got 16 years of experience in professional services as a management consultant, an executive and corporate recruiter. She's recruited for leading companies in media.
Now wait, a management consultant, isn't that one of those people who goes in and tells you who to fire?
Not all the time.
Wow. Only part of the time, Jack. Didn't you see that movie Up in the Air? Were you like George Clooney's?
No,
naked
I actually
person?
wasn't like George Clooney,
Okay.
thankfully.
All right.
But, yeah.
Anyway, here's the cool thing. She's an extreme career changer. She started her career as a classical pianist.
Wow.
That is so impressive. Megan, where is the piano? Why are we doing a show without a piano in the room? Anyway, she's a graduate of Barnard College, Columbia University. And so give us your take on where we stand in the employment picture. You're really on the ground. You talk to people all the time. Besides, beyond the numbers, which we know got a little bit better last year, what are you seeing?
Well, here's the thing. You have to go beyond the numbers, right? Because regardless of what the employment statistics are, unless you're a politician or an economist, you shouldn't look at that number. Your number is 0 or 100%. You either have a job or you don't. And I think people lose sight of that because they look at the numbers fluctuating up and down. They freak out, or they hear that, oh, it's really tough for teenagers. It's really tough for older people. It's really tough for XYZ. Again, at the end of the day, you should look at your own job search and how you're doing and try to fix it.
And also, doesn't it I mean, you just, maybe what you just said means what I'm about to say is foolish. However, I have seen that certain demographic groups are doing a lot better than others. For instance, college graduates, allegedly the unemployment rate is around 4.5% versus people with no high school education. It's like 1 in 4.
Right. So there's definitely an issue of there are certain industries or certain types of jobs that are doing better than others. Certainly knowledge workers are doing well, and there's a scarcity of those. So if you're looking at certain things like digital jobs, technology jobs, healthcare, energy, kind of at the management executive level. So these are jobs which require degrees and which require professional certifications. And so yes, it is skewed to certain industries and jobs. But at the same time, again, I'll say that depending on your own job search and how well you conduct that, you don't have to look at 8.5% or even 17%. You have to be the 1 out of the 9 out of 10, right, that has a job.
Right. And so, I mean, just want to sort of get a little bit of a landscape. We've got a lot of questions from people who are over 50. And one just came in. It's probably a pretty good kind of tipping off point where this guy is working. He's been out of work for over 2 years, and he was in banking and finance. So he's kind of wondering, with this big gap, what happens, and is there some effort to actually hire the long-term unemployed? There was some talk about federal programs to encourage employers. What happened with all of that?
Well, here's the thing about the gap. So employers aren't looking at the gap and saying, oh, here's a gap, I'm just going to put this resume aside. When they see a gap, what they're thinking is this person's network is out of date, their skills are out of date, and their expertise is out of date.
Wow.
And so those are the real flags that you have to address. So it's not about a 2-year gap versus a 1 year or a 6 month or whatever. It's about how robust is my knowledge, is my network. And if you can prove that you've been out there, that you're still communicating with people, that you still know who the competitors are, that you're up on what the trends are, it definitely closes that gap in the minds of the person that's trying to hire you.
So just do those 3 things again, the 3 objections that you have to overcome. And let's say the gap is a year or more, is that about right for what raises?
I would even say 6 months.
Okay, so you're out of work 6 months. Your 3 things that you've got to hit are?
Your network, your skills, and your expertise, meaning that you still have to be talking to people. You still have to know who the competitors are. Your skills have to be up to date. So especially if you're in a job banking finance where, technology comes and goes and there might be different things that are happening, you need to be up to date on that. And in terms of expertise, you need to be following the markets.
Right. And should you proactively bring it up before someone else does? In other words, should you address that in a cover letter?
Oh, absolutely.
Really?
Absolutely.
All right, give me some verbiage. How do we do that?
Yeah, what we want to know is what you're doing. So, and it doesn't have to be paid work. So here's the thing. If you are volunteering, if you're doing pro bono consulting, if you are active in that trade organization, which will hit, again, your network, your skills, your expertise, if you're doing all of those things, you can talk about those things.
Okay.
And an employer is not going to sit there going, wow, this person seems to know what's going on, but did they get paid for that?
Right.
Interesting.
And so let me give you a quick question here. Terry's a 50-plus-year-old displaced social worker. I thought everyone was crazy. We don't need social workers? Okay. I have a master's degree in human services, over 20 years experience in the social services industry. I'm looking for a career change, but I find it difficult to get interviews in any other industry. So we're going to talk about the career shifters, right? Do you have any advice on how I should word or frame my resume so that I can get interviews for the jobs I want? I've been looking in healthcare and pharmaceutical.
So here's the thing, and I say this as a career changer myself and as a recruiter myself, I wouldn't have hired myself.
Really? So how'd you break through?
Recruiters don't hire career changers from resumes because a resume, as it's written, is a factual document. You will have to put, you've been in social work for 20 years.
Right.
You haven't been in healthcare or pharmaceuticals. So you have to bridge the gap some other way. You have to get people to hear your story. And that's typically a face-to-face or an online communication. I mean, this isn't a resume.
So,
and I would think that that's where your network is so crucial, because if someone, like you say, if I got a stack of resumes, and in this market, you're going to get so many people with precisely the qualifications you want, and you get someone from another field, of course you're going to discard that because you've got all these fully qualified people. But if someone walks into your office who says, look, I know Jill, she's fantastic. I worked with her. It doesn't make any difference what's on her resume. She's going to ace it for you. Then you're going to bring that person in.
That's exactly right. And the thing is that your network then has to be in the career field that you're targeting. So it's not about networking with social workers. It's going to be about networking with people in pharmaceutical who can bridge that gap
and
for you.
find the way in, basically.
And
Robin,
would
I'm
you
sorry.
also suggest? I mean, I'd be tempted to tell this person, you know what, that's fine that you want to do that, go for it, but also keep looking for a job in your old field just so you can get back in the employment game, pay the bills, and also I think someone with a job is all the more employable than someone without one, even for a career changer. If I say, look, I love journalism, but I want to go be a banker, I think that's a lot easier for me coming from my journalism job than if I lost my journalism job and walked into a bank as an unemployed guy.
Sure, if money's a consideration, a career change is a lot longer job search than if you're going, obviously, to your same industry and type of job. What I would say, however, is if this person has the time, doing something within pharmaceutical or healthcare, again, it could be pro bono, it could be volunteer, it might get you there faster than a paid job in another industry.
Right, and by the way, taking drugs doesn't qualify in this particular case. Okay, Robin, also a career changer. A couple more questions that she brings up. She's worked as a manager of food and nutrition services for 25 years in a medium-sized acute care hospital. Here are her questions. I do not have senior management experience, but I want to be considered for senior leadership roles now. How can I bridge that gap in my cover letter and resume? That's kind of interesting.
Right. So some people don't have the title, but they actually have evidence of doing the job. So if you think about, what do senior managers do? They typically run a budget and make decisions that way. They're typically managing perhaps larger teams, or maybe they're making more strategic decisions. So to the extent that you can point to that and say, I've done it perhaps on a smaller scale or a different situation, you can at least say, this is evidence of senior management potential.
And really important to add specifics. So I had 16 direct reports, and they under them had 36 total. That sort of thing. On the way here, I read an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal in which a guy made all these accusations without one single specific. I kept on reading to find out what dastardly deed had been done here, and nothing was in there.
Couldn't figure it out. Darn it.
And it's a good example of how it's so much a stronger sell no matter what you're trying to do. Convince someone of your position or get a job when you have those specifics.
And Caroline, Robin brings up something that I've always wondered about. I used to own my own company, but it was a pitsy-cock little company, 25 people, and we managed $600 million. And Robin says, I feel that because I come from a smaller business, that prospective employers are not convinced that I can take on a much larger portfolio. So, even for me, if I were to go say, hey, I ran money and I had clients, I owned a company, what can I say to a future employer? How do I walk into a larger place and translate that into saying, 25 people or 250 people, I can do it?
Well, it's a legitimate concern. I mean, Jack, you had mentioned that employers want to see exactly the experience from before. And so that means the size of company from before. So basically, you have to show that you can navigate a larger company. So larger companies can have more bureaucracy. They're not going to call it that, but they're going to have more layers. You're going to have to influence without authority. You're going to have to work with bigger clients. What does that mean? Probably more touch points, more sales calls before you can actually get to a decision. So to the extent that you can talk through and say, this is how I would handle a larger client, or this is a client, that I worked with that's very similar to the type of client that I expect that I would work with at your company. Again, it's about getting them in the mindset, I've done this job already, even though I haven't called it that.
Interesting. So here's Jennifer, who lives in a small city, 350,000. And she says, I believe there aren't many $35,000 to $40,000 type jobs in the city unless you are a computer programmer. Poor liberal arts majors, what are we to do? Anyway, Jennifer has a communications background, and she finds there aren't many jobs in my area, though more are appearing on the job boards these days. That's good. So I feel I have to compromise and apply for jobs that aren't a perfect fit, but then I end up having less than perfect interviews. So because she's not the right fit, she's kind of reaching to go into other places. She says, for example, I applied for a web specialist position. I do web design occasionally on the side, but it wasn't enough experience to get the offer. How can I sell myself on these, quote, less than a perfect job opportunities?
So here's the thing. If you're relying on job postings to get your job, just keep in mind that a lot of them are outdated by the time they get posted. And so if you're really positioning yourself just against that particular job posting, you're off target already. So what you really need to do is look at the company and decide, what type of person do they hire? Look them up on LinkedIn, see who they've hired in the past, how they talk about their jobs. She's saying that she doesn't have enough web experience. I don't know if that's true or not. It might just be the examples that she gave in terms of how she would handle that project. Again, employers want to know that you can hit the ground running and do the job. So as long as you can prove that, it's not about X years of experience. It's about, can you do it?
And the job posting thing also reminds us that you really, really need to think about human beings. And of course, you're going to need a keyboard, you're going to need a screen, but everyone gets jobs through personal connections. And I don't mean because daddy owns a company. I mean because you've worked somewhere else and you impress someone, and that person is now at a different place. They hire you, or they put in a good word for you, or whatever. And you build this network. And then that's how, because the hiring managers, especially in this market, I mean, remember, when when someone hires you, they're taking a big risk for their own career.
Absolutely.
So the more reassurance they have that you are the right person, the better off you'll be.
So let's talk a little bit about the 50-plus workers. Terry brings up a great question, and she wants to, I don't know if it's a he or she. Terry, sexually
Pat.
ambiguous person here. Okay, Terry wants to know, so what are opportunities available for 50-plus workers? And I want to add one other question in, because I'll ask for my favorite soon-to-be 50-plus employee, my sister, who has a gap that's not small. She has like a 20-year gap in her resume. She was an investment banker, and she's not going back to investment banking now. Sure. She raised her kids. How do you frame the experience of being a stay-at-home mom and try to get back into the workforce? You're over 50. What do you do?
I think for the stay-at-home mom, I think it's really difficult to translate the household experience. Definitely school, volunteer, something outside the home is infinitely more translatable, because the household is so personal and you don't really want to be talking about children. I mean, unless you're going for a job where you're going to be dealing with children.
I got all the groceries. I cooked every night.
It just doesn't relate,
right,
to a professional context. But certainly leadership positions on the PTA or organizing an event for a school, that definitely translates. And I've seen job seekers be very successful who had off-ramped for whatever reason, whether it's for family reasons or they just wanted to pursue something else, who come back and they can translate that into skills for the office.
And you know what is so funny? Because my sister has done a ton of that kind of work, including the worst job in the world, which is president of the PTA of the kids' school, which is horrifying. It's right up there with my brother-in-law being the president of the Little League.
Ooh.
Really bad also.
Wow.
Bad position.
How do you get people to hate you?
Yeah, exactly.
No matter how good a job you do.
But I think people recognize how difficult those jobs are.
I do too. And it was funny because she went and she's done a lot of stuff in philanthropy, and people kept coming back. She started talking to people and they kept coming back to the PTA experience. So she's been out trying to talk to people on network, and she would probably like to do something in a philanthropic organization, what I told her to do is I said, hey, you know what? You do have a numbers background. You can fall back on that. You know how to read a spreadsheet. You know how to read an income statement. You know how to do a lot of the things that a lot of people are not, it doesn't come very naturally to them. Is there anything else I should tell her?
No, I think her experience is really desirable, but I think it's going to come down to, again, that network, skills, and expertise, and she needs to be very specific, to Jack's point, what happened with fundraising, while she was president of the PTA?
Right, specific.
What happened, to the school? Did the enrollment numbers increase, or whatever the mandate was for that PTA? However you're going to measure that, if it's teacher satisfaction or parent satisfaction, she needs to come up with some wins that are tangible and that she can demonstrate.
That's so great.
Terry, and we just learned a new word, by the way, from Caroline. At least I did. Off-ramped. I like that.
Oh, yeah, that's awesome, right? Yeah, I want to get back on. I'm going on the on-ramp. I'm going to the yield sign. What's the best resume format to use?
So here we go. I don't want people to focus on the resume.
Okay.
I mean, at the end of the day, the resume is going to be skimmed in 5 seconds. I kid you not. So the best way to check your own resume is to give it to someone outside of your industry and see if they can tell you what you did.
Oh, okay. I like that.
Yeah, and the other thing is make sure you have a summary of qualifications at the top that frames for the reader in 3 or 4 bullet points what you want to say. So you might want to say number of years of experience, industry experience, your functional experience, any of your wins. So if you've increased sales, if you've decreased costs, if you raised funds, if you managed X amount of people or managed a budget, that's the type of thing that you want to put up there. If you have specific computer skills, if you have language skills, that's what you want to put there. people stop reading after that.
Okay.
Yeah,
like
I
that.
just was on a conference call today where we were talking about hiring interns, actually, and the HR guy who was leading it actually suggested that people spend 30 seconds on resume. I don't know if on each resume, I don't know if they'll even get that much, but it gives you an example. I mean, here is a case of someone actually telling people how to focus on resumes, and he was saying 30 seconds. The real world cut that by half at least.
Because the companies that need to hire don't have the time to hire. This
Right.
is what
Right.
you have to realize. They're so busy getting work done that they're going to be struggling to fill those jobs.
Are there trigger words on a resume that HR folks get a little queasy about?
You know what's interesting? As much as I say that we skim it for 5 seconds, HR people can find typos. They like a laser. And it's something where, this doesn't have to happen, and make sure that company names are spelled properly, make sure software is spelled properly, because we'll notice it, because we are so used to skimming. In terms of, names, we love companies and brands, of course, so anything that's recognizable is a great thing to skim. And if you work for a company that's impressive, but we might not know about it. So let's say you worked abroad and you worked for one of the biggest companies in that country, and we're not going to know that.
Right.
If you put something underneath the company name and say the largest,
Blankety
bank
blank in China.
yeah,
Right. Okay.
That's
That's cool.
helpful.
All right. So here's a question in the chat room. How do you make your resume more attractive if you're over 55? Now, listen to this. On every application, I'm asked my college graduation date.
Wow.
I think I'm being weeded out due to age. What do you think?
So here's the thing about age discrimination. If someone's going to do it, they'll figure out a way to do it.
That's true.
Right? Worrying about getting past people who are going to discriminate against you for the wrong reasons is just going to be a losing battle. It's the same thing, though. This is why I don't like resumes. This is why I don't like online applications, because it's too easy to weed people out. These are not things that invite people in. We're just looking for reasons to exclude people. So work the network. When you're over 55, you know a lot of people.
You sure do. And I think that people forget that. All the people, Jack, you hate this. You're a very good networker. You say you're not, but you are. You're a stealth networker. But you do. You don't realize all the people you know and all the different things they do. And just talking to people is really awesome. It's like, to me, I would think, I'm an old-time salesperson, so I look at finding a job or even networking as part of the sales process. You're just always doing it, and you're getting yourself out there, and you're touching as many people as you can, and you never know when those people get recycled and come back into your life. You don't.
Right, and lucky for you, older people know more senior people.
That's right, exactly.
And it's so crucial to not just email that person you knew from 5 years ago when you need something.
Yeah.
So do it now, even if you're looking in X career. Talk to the people in that other career who you know, because they can't give you anything right now. So all the better reason to reach out, say how you are, send them an article you thought they might find interesting, and who knows what'll come of it.
Now, listen, Ryan is a college student. Bless his heart, right? Yeah. He's the other end of the spectrum. He's majoring in business administration, which probably is the most useless degree you could probably get, really. I mean,
that was nice, Jill.
But it is. You can't, there's nothing you can, but anyone who knows anything
Don't
knows
despair,
that that's nothing. That's just, it's nothing. You might as well, you think it's better than English? It probably is like a half a step better.
A lot of the hiring is done without looking at a major, except for very technical things. But I will say, if he's taken accounting courses, that's really helpful.
Yeah, I would say that if you forget about this whole marketing baloney, because everyone knows that that's baloney. So you might as well take a straight up accounting class, take a statistics class if you're going to Wall Street,
Quantitative
and
stuff.
take like real stuff. Take 2 semesters of calculus, and make sure you tell the people that you know how to do math, because that's important if you're going into finance. Now, they don't really care about marketing, sorry. Is sending out my resume to a large number of contacts that I got from a, quote, book of lists a good idea? Wow. I've slammed his major, you slammed his strategy.
I mean, the problem with that first job is that you don't have that network. You don't have those contacts. So the shotgunning, even though it's a very low percentage, well, if you send out enough, you might hit it. That was how I got my first job, was, after sending out a whole ton of resumes, I finally landed at this tiny, tiny newspaper. So while I say, because it's such a low percentage play, that doesn't mean it's not that expensive. So he might as well go ahead and do it.
But you got to work that whole college angle. You've got to find anyone who is a graduate of your school,
Yeah,
Exactly.
anything,
You do
and
know
rock
people.
it.
It's a myth that you don't know people. Professors and professors know people.
Oh, yeah.
Your career services office, again, alumni, and they've been in your shoes, so they're going to help you.
And let's be honest that, as much as we like to say that it's like admissions policies at colleges, yes, it's need blind. But when you see the name of a college that's familiar to you, you're like, oh, okay, that's fine. I'm interested in that,
Right.
And we're not quite as open to these colleges we've never heard of. I remember talking about 10 years ago to a friend of mine who was telling me a funny story about going to a college in California that's really a great college, Pomona. It's a very fine college, and interviewing in East Coast banks and then being like, what? Where's that? Petaluma? No, Pomona. So it's kind of tough. You've got to remind, and then you can say, the one of the 10 best colleges, but these networks are pretty strong, and if you find alum, that's what I would do, work that.
And it's not just alumni. You could do college sports. If you were in college sports or in extracurriculars, find people who have the same shared interest. It's just about building an affinity. So alumni is one way.
Okay, Donna.
And of course, he's got to do internships. I mean, he probably knows this, but do internships and follow up with those people you worked with. One of our former interns just did that the other day.
I was just going to ask you about those interns.
And I was able to, give her some help.
Really?
Yeah.
She was good.
Yeah.
They both were good. There were two, and I always confused them. They both hated me for that. Okay. Donna recently graduated with a Master's of Science degree in IO psychology. What is IO psychology?
Industrial organization.
Oh, thank you very much. And have been having a difficult time finding full-time employment. I've tried applying on several websites.
Here we go.
Here we go.
All
Career
these job
Builder.
postings.
I've sought placement through recruiters. The main response has been, quote, not enough experience in my field. But this is that terrible which comes first. How do I gain experience without getting my foot in the door?
Right. So stop worrying about recruiters and job boards. Less than 20% of your time should be focused on those two mediums. You should be thinking about the companies that you want to work for and think about where will IO psychology graduates be working. Probably in HR and leadership development, perhaps in corporate strategy, if that's where they handle, organizational design there. You have to find out for the companies you want to work for, where would I sit? And then who runs that area and contact that person directly.
Very interesting. So in the chat room, we've got Concerned saying, Ms. Carolyn, please help list strategies for career change applicants, some do's and don'ts. And let me just follow that up by Kronda, who wrote, I'm unemployed and wanting to transition into the finance industry. I would like to work for one of the big four accounting firms. However, I haven't been able to find a way to get traction. I have an education background, received an MBA with a finance emphasis in 2009, and currently working on certificates in accounting and taxation. So how do we go from education into real hardcore banking or accounting?
So here's the thing about career change. Outsiders don't get hired, only insiders do. So you can't be an education person and talk about your education degrees and talk about everything that you've done in education and hope that the recipient, the accounting hiring manager, can somehow translate that into what makes sense for them. You have to do that for them. So you essentially have to know what the big four are working on, where they will hire, where exactly you want to work, because the big four, they have tax, they have audit, they have risk, they have financial advisory, they have a lot of different departments.
And would you go abroad? Maybe they're looking for people
Right, they have
who want
lots
to
of different offices.
Yeah.
So you have to be really, really specific about what you're trying to do. And again, find the hiring manager.
Right. Sometimes it is luck a little bit, right? I mean, on some level, I'm not saying that luck,
it's
but
not luck. I think it's quantity and quality,
Yeah.
right? So quality is what I was just talking about in terms of being specific about what you want and finding the hiring manager. But there's quantity too, because you might find someone and they're just not hiring.
Right.
So if you put all your, the big four, they might have multiple jobs there, but it's still just four companies.
Right, and why not go down levels or go places to get your foot in the door?
Mid-size accounting
Right,
firms or other financial
go in-house
institutions.
and be in accounting in-house for one of the large banks
Right.
or medium-sized banks. Even.
There's no cliche about how you make your own luck, but it's so true in this case. It's by doing all the right things, and eventually you do get lucky because that right thing happened to be at the place where they're hiring. In my case, somebody was asking me for help getting a job, and she was also in accounting and PR and a whole bunch of stuff that I didn't do. And then somebody contacted me, a recruiter contacted me to see if I wanted to go work at Deloitte. And I forwarded that to her. and she has been there for the
That's
last 15
so
years.
cool.
Yeah.
That's kind of even better than a matchmaking.
I was kind of hoping for a little annuity out of
No,
this, maybe.
you got
but,
nothing. Did you get dinner?
No.
Oh, come on. Someone got me
but
a job.
I'm very
I'd buy dinner.
happy to have helped her.
Oh, that's nice. Okay.
It'll come back to you in another way.
Exactly.
That's right.
No. Then that's the whole
paid it
point of this
forward.
discussion is
Yeah.
it always comes around. Yeah.
Jim has been a program project manager in high tech, mostly software development, for many years. However, over the past 4 years, he's not been able to get hired full time in that field. I've been able to get a few short-term, part-time contract jobs, but nothing full time. Nothing with medical benefits. I'm 60 years old now, and though my resume would not indicate that, I can't seem to get many interviews, and when I do, I don't get hired. I've had my general resume reviewed by professionals, reworked it to be as good as possible, but I think my lack of full-time employment for 4 years is starting to hurt me in the eyes of employers, and with technology moving so fast, maybe my lack of recent experience in current technologies also hurts me. How do we reframe Jim?
Yeah, so I would say that I'm wondering if there's something coming up in the interviews that he is getting that's signaling somehow that he's not interested in full-time, or he's not someone who would stick around for the long time. If I'm an employer and I see someone who has a bunch of short-term stints, I'm thinking either this person doesn't want to work full-time, gets bored really easily and then quits, or he's not good enough and people never wanted to convert him. And I think that might be a hurdle there.
And I always wonder if you could frame it as, instead of saying I've been working part-time, is to say that, you know, I wanted to work, I've been self-employed, and talk about it as you're a business owner, instead of saying I've gotten some part-time work here and there.
Right, I've been a consultant.
Yeah, I've been a consultant, and so I don't know, I would think that that is at least a better path than to say it's been a hodgepodge and I take what I can get. I eat what I kill.
no,
God
I'm
luck.
wondering if it is something in the interview, you know, where how he talked about himself.
Right. Someone in the chat room wanted to know the big 4 accounting firms. I just had to look it up because I kind of forgot which ones are left. PricewaterhouseCoopers, Ernst & Young, KPMG, and Deloitte Touche. So they're your big 4 accounting firms. So in case, and there used to be 8, but then a couple of them went broke. Okay, chat room wants to know what you think of externs. That is interns who do work remotely. Is this a good way to make connections?
You
I
have
never
to,
heard that.
Yeah, you have to know how to make connections. This is the thing, is, you know, if you're not in the office, as much as we say, oh, it's virtual and you can still connect with people online, that's hard, you know, because people don't really know you yet. So if you haven't been in the office, it's really hard to make those connections. So I would recommend that you try to come at least once a week, or there's no substitute for face-to-face.
And your only potential resources are the people you've worked directly with.
Yeah.
So I've had freelance writers who have worked for me, and the good ones I've been able to give them referrals. But the other editor in the magazine never met them. But had they been there, then
Right,
that
they would have
network would
gotten
be
a
a
little
lot
more
wider.
FaceTime,
So,
right?
yeah, I agree.
That's interesting. Okay, so we got some more questions here. I'm just blasting through. Terry's had 4 interviews for a major pharma company for a specialty salesperson. Great. This reminds me, by the way, that everybody should know how to sell. If you know how to sell, you can pretty much get a job. 1 with an internal recruiter, 2 interviews with hiring district managers, and 1 with a regional manager. Already I'm bored by this process. If I'm this guy, I'm already like,
there can be a lot more interviews.
I know. I've sent follow-up notes after each one. I also sent 2 additional notes to the hiring district manager. 1 to express my interest before the interview with his regional manager, and the last one a week ago to thank him for the opportunity to interview with a regional manager and inquiring about the next step. The sales force was away all last week, and I have yet to hear anything back from the hiring manager. He did not reply to my last email.
Ooh.
Okay, but wait, they were away all last week.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Would you advise me to email the hiring manager again, or should I be patient and wait? Should I reach out to the internal recruiter? I don't want to appear to be a nuisance and a pest, but I want to know one way or the other whether I'm moving forward as the successful candidate or if they decided to pursue other candidates. So here's the thing. You are on the verge of being a nudge or fantastic follow-up. How do you know?
So here's the thing, and it's not going to help Terry right now, but for everybody else, when you go to an interview, definitely confirm what the process is. Don't walk out of an interview without saying, when am I going to hear from you? Who should I follow up with? Because they might have then at that point said, well, we're seeing a number of people because of the sales conference next week. We're not going to see anybody for another 3 weeks. And then he wouldn't, or she wouldn't have to worry about all of this. Okay, this person didn't do that. So for this particular situation, I would say they've done all the right things already. I would reach out to the internal recruiter, because you've only done that one time, and you absolutely can say it's been a couple of weeks, would like to know where we are in the process. I'm still really interested, so I would definitely express your interest. But after that, I would still keep in touch with them, but not about that process.
Okay,
I
that's
would
good.
find a way. Jack mentioned sending an article, so I would think about the things that you discussed, perhaps their sales strategy, their sales approach. When you find something interesting to say, send them that so that you're still in the running, and all this time start looking for other jobs.
Right. Tammy in the chat room wants to know, and so do I, for God's sakes, are there some sites like LinkedIn, Monster.com that are more resourceful than others? You hate them all, really. You do.
I don't. No,
You do.
I
You're
don't
a hater.
hate them.
You're a hater.
I hate job board sites just for the postings. I love them for research.
Okay.
So I think they definitely have their place. And LinkedIn, because it's essentially a book of resumes and enables you to network with people, has so many uses. So not only does it have jobs, but it has people's backgrounds, so you can see who are the people that get hired at this place. You can see how are they describing their positions. They have groups, so you can talk to people of either like industry or like goals. You can do your salary research on there, again, by, perhaps posing a question to the group and, asking for feedback. So there are a lot of uses for LinkedIn. So I would say if you do one thing, do that.
I have a silly question on LinkedIn. So I think the answer is yes, but if I know I want to work in so-and-so industry, I only know one person there, can I go look at her profile, find a bunch of people who are actually at the firms I want to apply, and say, hey, can you connect me with Caroline because she works at the place I want to work? Can I actually see all of her connections?
If you're connected to her, yes, you can see her connections. And this is why you want to connect to a lot of people, because we don't know who our people know.
Right.
Sure.
Right. That's really the best point about that. Concerned wants to know, should I spend a fortune on professional resume writers, ops ladders, and the likes? And then there's a lot of chatter in here about, like, which one is good? What about this? What about the ladders? What about this? So Simply Hired, what do you think?
So I am not a fan of using the resume for your job search. I've been saying that over and over again, and I wouldn't spend my time and I wouldn't spend my money there.
That's good. That's good
I'd
to know,
spend
though.
my money on taking people out for coffee.
Right.
Frankly.
That's right.
Yep.
Go buy yourself like a discount card at Starbucks or something. Dawn wants to know.
But remember, the resume can work against you. The typos you mentioned,
Yeah,
if it
so
doesn't have that summary at the top. So make sure you've done a good job with it, but don't blow your...
Make sure it's clean, make sure it's factual, put that summary of qualifications on the top, and then that's it.
So Dolores had a job that was eliminated in February of 2010, and I've been unemployed since that time. I was a senior administrative assistant with delegate authority for a regional director, making $44,000 a year. I was in school working towards my BA in journalism at the time. Oh, you poor thing. BA in journalism. Okay, employers want me to accept $8 to $10 an hour salaries because I don't have my degree. Right, so she was working on her degree, trying to get it, then she loses her job. But I've mostly held positions in the $40,000 range without a degree. My question is, how can I get another job making $40,000 without a college degree like I've done in the past? Why aren't employers at large companies taking my past work experiences seriously? Because they have too much. They probably have plenty of people who have just as much experience with a degree, right?
Right. And again, it's unclear how she's applying for these jobs. She might need to get in front of people and demonstrate what she's done. It's very difficult to do that on the resume because her resume is just going to highlight how she doesn't have a degree.
Right.
The other thing about salary negotiation is it's based on what the market will bear and also the level at which you're coming in. So...
Are there any free educational tools that I can use to build my computer IT knowledge, accounting, and business administration skills? I'm looking to return to college, and I would like to be able to prepare for advanced placement exams if it's possible, and or receive continuing education credits from self-study work that I complete on my own. I'm looking for resources to aid in my skill building that won't break my piggy bank. What do you think? I don't know anything about that.
Code Academy Code Academy is a startup that offers programming classes for free online. They're virtual.
Wow.
MIT is opening up a lot of their courses to the public for free. They already have courses that are available to the public for free. I mean, I would be just Googling the specific, whatever it is that you want to learn, whether it's Java or HTML or Agile or whatever it is, and classes and see what you come up with. But Code Academy is definitely.
And MIT looks good on that
Yes.
fairly useless resume. But still, it can't
Yeah,
hurt.
exactly. That useless resume, you
But
might
we
as well
like
throw it on
brand
there.
names.
Yeah,
That's
exactly,
right.
yep.
So people do
Yep.
their eyes move to that. Jim writes he's got an exceptional career history building successful operations in the U.S. and overseas. I tried my own consulting business for 2 years, but then decided to return to the professional workforce. I've been looking for 3 years. Wow. No one will touch me even after they tell me my credentials are superlative. Why do they not want to touch him? Maybe he's, I don't know.
It's that whole entrepreneur to employee transition.
Yes.
We're going to wonder if he's got 1 foot in, 1 foot out. Perhaps he just wants to come in for a little bit, save his money, and then be on his own again.
Wow.
Because entrepreneurs are headstrong, they're stubborn. Will they ever really work for somebody else?
I work for Jack. I love it. I tell you the truth, as a former entrepreneur, you can treat your job entrepreneurially. And I will say the nicest thing, and you own your own business, so you know this, that there is a certain amazing moment where you're like, wait a minute, I don't have to worry about making payroll.
Yeah.
And that's a pretty good
No,
thing.
I agree, and I've seen people make the transition successfully, but what I'm saying is this is the red flag in the
that's what
eyes
people
of the
are
employee.
looking
That's
for.
what they're looking for, and so
Okay.
you've got to go get over that hurdle.
For this guy, I wonder if he would be able to restart this business. I mean, I don't know what process he's in, but maybe his best bet is to do good work for a client as an entrepreneur and then say, hey, you know what, this is great, but let's do this full time.
Yeah, that's a possibility.
And just before we finish up here, I just want to, kind of take a step back here. So let's reframe this whole thing, which is don't get yourself freaked out about the resume. Do your networking. You know more people than you realize. Make sure that you don't get caught up in these numbers that we love to report. I like to report that stuff because it's a good headline, but let's be honest. You're right. I love that. You said it's either there's only 2 numbers, 0 or 100, right? So you either have a job or you don't. And for people who are getting disheartened, what do they need to do? How do you, I don't know, how do you infuse some energy or regenerate your job search? What can you do that, give them some words of wisdom, girl?
Remember that people hire people, so this is an interaction. So to the extent that you can tell a story about yourself that engages someone else and says, wow, this person has really accomplished some interesting things, and that you can show that you're genuinely interested in doing good work for them. You understand their company, their industry, you understand what they want to have happen in their business, and you can say, I'm the one that can do that for you for XYZ reason. That's really what we're talking about here in terms of getting hired. And just remember, if you've been looking for 3 weeks or 3 months or 3 years, companies' needs change. So you might have talked to someone 3 months ago and they really didn't have anything, but that might be different now.
And there may be a new boss, and the new boss may want to bring in new people and have a little bit of a refreshing of the unit, so you never know that as well. Right.
And that story, you said they use the word story, and that's so important because I think people tend to fall back on platitudes and they say, I am good at...
I'm a people person.
I'm a people person, right? I would like to work very hard, blah, blah, blah. Tell me about a problem that you faced and then the creative solution that you used to overcome it. And I remember, when I was out of work before I came here, I remember seeing eyes light up when I described a very specific situation. When the boss wanted to fire someone, I took over management of her, and she's now doing a great job. And this tone in the room changes than if you just said, well, I really like to do X and Y. Who cares? So do a lot of people.
So specific and emphasize your examples and skills and your expertise. Bang it home, own it, and don't forget to smile. Don't look desperate. That's the other thing. That's a bummer. I'm sorry. I mean, I've interviewed a lot of people in my life. Like that moment where it's just like high school. If you really desperately want to go to the prom and you have that look on your face, he or she ain't asking you.
It's not fair, but that's how it is.
But it is,
and
right?
every time you walk in an interview, you have to act like it's the first interview you've ever had, and
but
you're
this
excited.
is where the quantity comes in. This is why you should be looking at a lot of different jobs so you're not so dependent on that one opportunity.
Last question. What about joining a support group, not just a networking group?
Oh, that's a terrific idea.
I love that.
I love that idea. I always encourage people to have at least one job search buddy that you can call each other and make sure that you've done whatever you've set out to do that day, whether it's researching LinkedIn or updating your resume or whatnot. But make sure it's not a pity party. So make sure you invite the right people to the group.
That's right. You don't want the bad people dragging you down, right? Well, Carolyn Ceniza-Levine, who is at 6 figure start, her who's the co-founder? Who's the co?
Connie Thanasula-Saraccio.
What do you guys
Wow.
only have like 500 names?
I
What are you
know,
talking about?
we're the land of the hyphenated
I mean,
names.
imagine if poor Megan Jordan came. She wouldn't get a job. It's too simple.
Well, I think the operative thing is Connie ran recruiting for Merrill Lynch, for Citigroup, for Warner Lambert. I
Wow.
ran campus recruiting for Time Inc. So between the two of us, we've recruited for a lot of big name firms. And so when I say don't fret the resume, don't fret the resume.
Yeah, believe her. She's an insider.
Wow.
I like that.
Whoever got the job, had the job before you, recruited me at Middlebury College for a Sports Illustrated internship.
Oh my gosh, I
I'm not
studied
gonna
at
say-
Middlebury too.
Oh wow.
There we
Okay,
go.
cool. Okay.
See,
well,
affinity.
Yeah,
there
exactly.
it goes.
I'll be sitting in your chair,
They're
Joe.
going to be pouring bourbon and skiing very shortly. Well, really, Caroline, it's been fabulous. We're going to have you back. I just was typing to Megan, our producer, and saying we've got to bring her back and have like some sort of job summit or something. Like, it would be
Oh,
great
I
to
would
have you
love to
back.
do
It'd be
that.
terrific. And everyone who's out there is looking. We know it sucks, okay? It's a hard process. The economy is just crawling along, so we get it. So as much as you can take Carolyn's information to heart, and if you've got other questions and you want to shoot us an email at asktheexperts@moneywatch.com. I spaced a little bit. Send us an email. We can always forward it on to Caroline. And don't worry, you're going to just keep at it. Keep at it. Okay, so Caroline, thank you so much for joining us. Jack Otter, as always.
As always.
The Middlebury connection. Look
Yeah.
at you pulling that right out. What are they? The
Sure.
Middlebury what's? What's
The
the name?
Panthers.
The Panthers.
Luckily, they're not the Cougars.
No.
You
there
saw
may
that
be
story,
some.
right?
No.
There's a high school, I forget, Nebraska maybe.
Oh, right,
Oh,
they
yeah.
can't use that
They
name
can't
anymore.
use that name because
Yeah,
it might
that's right.
insult older women.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, so we're
Well,
the Panthers.
All right, very good. Well,
Go
to
Blue.
all the Middlebury Panthers out there, go Panthers, but go get 'em brown. Go Bears. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week at Ask the Experts.